And now I'm finally gonna shut up about my favorite Gran Turismo game. I've beaten this game 3 times, one going casually, another going without Japanese cars, and another with only yellow cars. But my time with GT2 is not done yet, because I've been getting recommended a mod for this game that tweaks the experience in hopes of keeping it fresh. Will this labor of love captivate me the way vanilla GT2 did? Ahoy there! I love classic Gran Turismo games, okay? Please just let me sleep. I'm not mad at these games, yet, and I don't want to burn myself out too quickly, so I'm gonna send off GT2 by looking at an ambitious mod for this game, Project A-Spec. So what is Project A-Spec? It's a mod for Gran Turismo 2 that adds a few new cars, tweaks some existing ones, and rebalances the progression of GT mode. Gran Turismo 2 is a very big game for the original PlayStation. So big, in fact, the arcade mode had to be fit onto its own disc to accommodate the 600 plus cars and 27 tracks. 600 cars is still a lot by today's standards, so the developers overcompensated by adding more cars, most of which have had custom models created. I was excited to try the mod out for myself, and many of you at home were excited to see me do so. I'm more than happy to oblige, so we're gonna look at Project A-Spec and give it a good, honest review. And then I can shut up about this 25-year-old game. For now. Installing the mod was a bit confusing, but I was able to figure it out. Using a program called XDelta UI, I took the XDelta file and patched it to my NTSC 1.2 copy of the game. However, renaming the file to anything other than what the Q file is looking for will cause Duckstation to refuse to load the game. I then moved the vanilla bin file elsewhere so I didn't confuse myself and the emulator, and now the game loaded correctly. If you're gonna install this mod yourself, also make sure you pick the version of GT2 that has a slightly larger file size in the launcher. A full tutorial on installing the mod is linked in the description. Once I got the mod installed, I was greeted with a custom title screen confirming the patch was applied correctly. And when I started the game, yes, it was still the same Gran Turismo experience for better or worse. That meant doing license tests and running the Sunday Cup rat race. There's only so much the mod team can do to the progression. However, one of the progression tweaks the team made was adjusting the prices of new cars in the car dealerships. Some non-Japanese cars can now be purchased with the 10,000 credits you get at the start of a new game. This can be beneficial for some self-imposed challenges, like beating the game without Japanese cars, since you no longer have to slave over license test gold times, or subject yourself to torture via Fiat 500R. In races, the AI seem a little bit more aggressive. They seem to try and overtake more often, seeing as the old conga line in vanilla is more scattered. That doesn't stop them from derailing like slot cars going too fast, though. Getting off the ground is the hardest part of any Gran Turismo, especially with the extra hoops to jump through to install the mod. But the devs did what they could to expand the range of shitboxes available to buy at the start. After playing through the game with everything I'd learned up to that point, I gathered my thoughts, and I'm now ready to share them, starting with all the things I like about the mod. I love how the devs were able to fit more cars into the game. Since this is a fan-made mod and not an official Polyphony Digital thing, they didn't have to abide by archaic licensing agreements that kept Porsche out, or restrict what they could and couldn't use. Some of the new cars are lesser-known race cars like the Castrol RX-7, some of them are cool cars like the Ford Indigo Concept and the Renault Sport Spider, and some are cars that are obscure by today's standards like the Renault Twingo or the Mazda RX-500. I'm not going to spoil all of the other cars new to the game because both you and I should be surprised as to what the devs added. But here's a hint. Some races that only gave out money may now give out prize cars as well. This is a breath of fresh air for events in Gran Turismo League that have also been reworked. Winning certain Nationals races and one-make races can award you new cars, and I mean new since I haven't seen these cars in vanilla GT2. Some of these new cars, like the aforementioned Renault Sport Spider, even have their own one-make races. The new content is integrated almost seamlessly into GT2, with new images for the new one-make races looking like it was an official part of the base game. And the one-make races that do have prizes introduce a new set of progression skips and car farming. For example, the AutoZam AZ1 one-make now gives out the new Castrol RX-7 race car. Because the method of earning prize cars is unchanged from vanilla, that means you can race in the AZ1 race again and get another Castrol RX-7, selling it for $125k. I also like how the other get-rich-quick schemes remain unchanged from the original game, so farm TVR Speed 12s to your heart's content. Speaking of the Speed 12, a handful of cars in the mod were tweaked to better match their real-world counterparts. The Speed 12 doesn't have a wing on the base model, so it was deleted. The Dodge Copperhead now shares its pre-ZZ Top lawsuit name. A few liveries were tweaked, like with the Alfa Romeo 155 DTM car. And now some racing modifications have been converted into their own separate race cars. These include the Lister Storm and the Ford Taurus. Cool to see, even if they're not very useful, which I'll get to later. A trivial change I like. Some cars have new colors. I can finally pick a cool color for the Vector W8 instead of yellow. Or I can finally have a Dodge Viper in yellow that I was sorely missing in my last playthrough. One thing I can't demonstrate is the new-ish music, since it's still copyrighted. Fans of Soul Coughing will be disappointed since Super Bon Bon is out of rotation due to CD space. But fans of 90s rock and grunge will be satisfied. I initially thought the soundtrack had become the PAL release due to the presence of Feeder, but nope. The devs curated different songs from the time, save for one that's too iconic to the NTSC release to keep out. Plus, if they couldn't integrate the mod into the arcade mode disc, they might as well put my favorite game in the soundtrack. And whoever came up with the idea to put in Rusty Cage by Soundgarden deserves a raise, even though they're not getting paid. I really like what the A-Spec mod devs are doing here, but I do have some complaints to address. This mainly comes down to the way progression was rebalanced. Some races have altered power limits due to the changed stats of JGTC cars. The GT300 cars in vanilla had more horsepower than the real GT300 restrictions of JGTC, and I appreciate this detail, but it comes at the cost of increased difficulty. Same with GT500. GT2's game logic puts AI opponents below the power cap, so if you had a car that was at or near the limit, the race becomes a cakewalk. While that is still the case with some races in the A-Spec mod, there's no room for error with the balance changes made. That could be a good thing if you like a challenge, because otherwise races are stupidly easy. But going back to GT300, this rendered the recolored Daishin Sylvia a suboptimal choice. The lower power output left the S15 at a slight disadvantage. I know the AI is more aggressive, but I don't know if there's a hint of rubber banding in these races. But if the rubber banding was any more blatant, the other cars would catch up on the first corner from the other side of the track. I sense rubber banding, but they've made it hard to notice. What's not hard to notice is how the higher-end cars can't be used in as many events as vanilla GT2. Sure, this makes it harder for cars like the Pikes Peak Escudo or Speed 12 to trounce the competition, but out of the 600 plus cars in the game, you can't use like 5% of them due to changes in power limits. It's a late game problem, but for events that the Speed 12 can enter, it still trounces the competition. Gran Turismo All-Stars is now laughably easy since lower-end race cars are now in the opponent pool. It makes acquiring the Speed 12 easy, but there's barely anything you can enter with it now. And then I gave the mod a 0 out of 10 because the Speed 12 shouldn't be allowed in the opponent pool with a 582 horsepower limit. It's annoying that this kind of skew in the grid is still happening, but you get some special prize cars from these races. It's kinda like the Speedster Trophy situation in Gran Turismo 4. High difficulty for high reward. I will admit I don't like difficulty in my games, but I'm understanding of why this was done. Doesn't mean I have to like it, though. And while I like the addition of new cars to the game, some cars don't really mesh with how GT2 looks. Granted, this is a fan mod, and it's a marvel that they even got new cars in the first place, but some cars just look off. The Renault Sport Spider, you can easily fool me into thinking it's a cut car, but you can't fool me into thinking the Renault Twingo, Mitsubishi HSR, or Plymouth Prowler were in GT2. I'm not trying to discredit the work of the people who made these models within the technical limits of the PS1, but they need a little more time in the oven. If you were someone who was expecting to see cars from the turn of the millennium, you'll be disappointed, but that's not the point. The mod team are intentionally picking cars from before 1999 when GT2 came out to keep it authentic to the era. You won't see C8 Corvettes or Lamborghini Aventadors in this because it'd look out of place for the time. It's not a hard-coded limit though, it's a self-imposed limit from the devs. I kinda wish the team could revamp the engine sounds, but I'm no expert on the PS1's limitations. I don't know if redoing engine sounds is even possible with things like bitrate and file size to worry about. Same thing with the CD soundtrack. They can change things, but they can't completely redo it. Plus, they couldn't deal with issues with song looping or changing to another song. It's a mod, so they're doing all this without access to source code. I'm indifferent about the lack of any new tracks though, seeing as no one really knows if there's a hard limit to how many courses can be in the game. Plus, creating a new track takes time. But if I could ask for anything, I would at least want to see Rome Night featured in races outside of one-make races, or the event generator. Wait, I take it back, it's there in GT League. Lastly, I haven't really tried rally or endurance events, but I'm assured that some rally races also give out prize cars. I've just been so used to skipping these events that I haven't had time to examine them, and I definitely do not have time for endurance events. However, there's a new event, Like the Wind. GT faithful know that Like the Wind is an endurance race set on the test course, so if you wanted to try it with GT2 driving physics, go ahead! This review wasn't as in-depth as my Pro Street PS2 review, but trying to review a mod and a game is like trying to review a car with aftermarket parts installed. It's not going to be a fair review to the car since the dynamics of the vehicle have changed. Similarly, it's not fair to review the entirety of Gran Turismo 2 with the A-Spec mod on top. It only makes sense to talk about what's changed, see if the changes were good or bad, and see if it's worth trying. And I can safely say that yes, Project A-Spec is worth trying. Mainly if you're a fan of GT2, like I am. The addition of new cars is an impressive feat for a mod to a PS1 game, and the changes to GT mode freshens up the experience for returning players. But if you haven't played GT2 at all and are looking to try it, you might end up frustrated with how long the single player may take. Even though that's an issue that's been part of the main game the entire time, the mid to late game changes may make your road to the Gran Turismo World League a little longer. But there's still a whole automotive sandbox to experiment with. If one car doesn't fit, try another. Project A-Spec is able to keep what makes the Gran Turismo game special and give you several ways to complete it. GT2 is about the journey and not the destination, so think of Project A-Spec as the alternate route. And that's enough for me to give Project A-Spec a recommended rating, but more of a light recommendation. You'll love it if you played GT2 before, but if you haven't, then I implore you to try the base game first. Either way, you'll still experience one of the best racing games the PS1 has to offer. A win-win in my book. Now, if you'll excuse me, I'm off to make something that isn't a Gran Turismo 2 video for a change. Squiddy the Kid signing off. Like, comment, subscribe, and all that jazz.